With the release of Escalation of Freedom a few days ago, the Helldivers 2 community is, once again, in shambles. You'd think that the biggest update this game has ever received would be a good thing, but a lot of players are voicing their displeasure, and the game now has the mixed review tag on Steam. My name is Easy, thank you for tuning in, let's talk about this. So, Escalation of Freedom is Helldivers 2's first major content drop. It was the first content drop that got its own name and came with its own trailer. If this game followed the seasonal format like lots of other live service games do, this would surely be the start of Season 2. That is how much marketing, effort, and hype went into this update. But if you're at all involved in any Helldivers community, you'll know that this update is very controversial, to say the least. It has not gone in the way that Arrowhead was likely expecting. So the only question is, where did they go wrong? For starters, they are back on the nerf train. In this patch, there are two major items that got hit with the nerf hammer, and this is the main source of anger for much of the community. Firstly, the Breaker Incendiary, which is a fan favorite and the #1 bug weapon in the game, got decreased magazines from 6 to 4 and an increased recoil from 28 to 41. At face value, the recoil change sounds massive, and of course the decreased mags is going to hurt its ammo count. This absolutely ticked people off, at least when they read it, but I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here and say that I think the Breaker Incendiary is probably still the best bug weapon in the game. The recoil increase can't even be felt. I literally feel absolutely no difference in recoil and don't think it really matters at all. However, you can definitely feel the ammo economy hit, which really hurts, but this can be mitigated with some better ammo management, or if you just take the supply pack, which is already the best pack in the game, you'll be completely fine and won't notice a difference at all. So, if you ask me, the Breaker Incendiary definitely skated by with minimal nerfs. It could have definitely gotten hit with a much larger nerf because it was the best gun in the game. It probably deserved it. So, I think we should actually all be kinda happy with what we got here. Please don't kill me, but I'd say Arrowhead was pretty fair here with the nerf. That being said, I do understand the community sentiment. It's not just the fact that it was the Breaker Incendiary specifically that got nerfed. It doesn't even matter what the nerfs are. People are mad at the fact that there are nerfs in this patch without any proper compensation on other weapons, which tells people that they have completely abandoned the new philosophy that they promised they would be living by. But we'll loop back around to this because we need to talk about the big nerf, the one that has people genuinely uninstalling the game, and that's not a joke. This little guy here, who was suspiciously hidden in the miscellaneous fixes section rather than the gameplay section, adjusted flame effects to work more realistically. To cut to the chase, this means the flamethrower has been nerfed, but it isn't just a slight nerf, it is now significantly less efficient at burning through armor. In fact, it doesn't really do it at all. If you thought the community reaction to the old Breaker and Railgun nerfs was bad, just don't go on the subreddit or Discord, it is absolutely hell right now. But you know what? All of those people are valid. They deserve to be angry. I'm not going to sit here and tell everyone they're wrong because they aren't. This is a really lame nerf. The flamethrower was one of the best solutions in the game when it came to anti-tank, especially because the behemoth can't be one-shot by standard anti-tank weapons, which is also a little lame to be honest, but that's beside the point. The flamethrower was great. It was the perfect quick solution to taking down chargers and also held its own against the smaller bugs. But it was fair. It was limited in ammo capacity, meaning you could either choose to use it against a couple of chargers or use it for horde clear. But if you used it for both, then you'd run into ammo issues. It also had the major flaw of lighting yourself on fire constantly, which would either get you killed or cause you to lose a chunk of health. So it had checks in place that made it balanced. It was the perfect middle ground between anti-tank and horde clear for bugs, and was the best solution for chargers. However, the post-nerf flamethrower has been turned into a wave clear only type of weapon because it now struggles immensely with chargers. According to Arrowhead, the new realistic flames shouldn't go through various objects like armor, and instead the expected behavior should be to bounce off. As you can see here, the flamethrower still performs relatively well when playing for horde clear against enemies with no armor. There are definitely better alternatives, but this gun is still an option. However, when you come face to face with a charger, good luck. Previously, a charger's weak spot was its leg, so you could see in this clip here, I am fighting this charger, shooting its leg for so long that I lost track how many canisters I used, but it clearly does absolutely nothing. And the funny bouncing flame aside, I don't think Arrowhead understands how flamethrowers, heat, or fire work. And I'm only bringing this up because they said realism was the reason for this change. Flamethrowers have been fueled with napalm since World War I. Napalm is a fuel-thickening agent that turns liquid fuel into a jelly-like consistency. This was done so that the fire that came from flamethrowers would stick and burn its targets. So no, the flames should not be bouncing off. If anything, it should be sticking to the charger and burning so hot that it is cooking its insides. That's how it would realistically work. But I guess our flamethrowers are like blowtorches. That's my best explanation. Anyway, you can still kill chargers with the flamethrower, you just have to hit them in their squishy butt, which, if you've ever attempted, is a complete pain in the ass. Even when you use a stun grenade, it is still difficult to find the time to walk around them and stand there and shoot them in the ass. It takes more ammo, it takes longer, and it is no longer efficient. It is not the charger killing machine that it used to be. So at this point, there are better solutions for both anti-tank and wave clear. The flamethrower is almost irrelevant in my book. I cannot recommend you use it under any circumstances. It just has no longer anything it's specifically good at. Previously, it was amazing at melting charges quickly, but now it has nothing special besides setting yourself on fire and looking cool. Side note, some business advice for Arrowhead, maybe don't nerf the two best flame weapons in the game right before you release the paid fire-resistant armor. That's just business 101, right? Like, what kind of choice is that? I can almost guarantee there are some people that were going to buy Freedom's Flame and they're now just like, nah, we don't have the flamethrower anymore. I don't care. Anyway, this brings us back to Arrowhead's philosophy, or rather, the one we were baited into believing that they had. 3 months ago, former CEO and current creative lead Pillisted tweeted this in regards to nerfing weapons. I think we've gone too far in some areas. We'll talk to the team about the approach to balance. It feels like every time someone finds something fun, the fun is removed. This tweet was followed up a couple of weeks later when Pillisted stepped down as CEO, and again when they released patch 1.4, which was objectively the best patch they've ever put out, featuring only buffs for over 30 items in the game. It was the gold standard for patches and still remains as such. The change in philosophy with these patches are jarring. It's almost like we're on a roller coaster with these patches, because the balance team started out with the mindset of nerfing everything fun, then when Pillisted jumped into a creative role, we got an absolute banger of a patch that seemingly buffed every damn item in the game. But now we've done a complete 180 with Escalation of Freedom, which has nerfed one of the most fun weapons in the game. However, I will say this video would be in bad faith if I didn't point out there were a few buffs in this patch, not a ton, but they are here. The Slugger, Grenade Pistol, Exploding Crossbow, Guard Dog, Walking Barrage, and 120 Barrage all got buffed. The weapon changes are pretty weak. I've used all three and I can't see these buffs changing the use rate on them. The stratagem buffs though are really good. The Guard Dog and Walking Barrage are both now great, and the 120 Barrage might be a top tier stratagem. It is fantastic. That being said, I don't think a single buff on this list makes up for what was lost with the flamethrower. To be honest, I think they could have tripled the amount of buffs on this list, and it still wouldn't have made up for what was lost with the flamethrower. Arrowhead has once again fallen into the same old habit of nerfing the fun stuff, and that is the issue. It's not that the Breaker and Flamethrower were broken guns and that's why everyone loved them. No, they were fun weapons and caused the destruction you want to cause in a game that's about slaying as many enemies as possible. The community is angry that one of their favorite weapons has been ripped away from them, and that Arrowhead hasn't continued down the path of buffing items and have reverted to their old selves of nerfing the fun. Instead of nerfing the Flamethrower and Breaker Incendiary, they should be buffing the bad weapons. They say the use case for the Breaker was too high. Okay, sure, the Band-Aid solution is to nerf the weapon so that less players use it. But what if, instead, they just buffed the other weapons to be on par with the Breaker? And I understand the other point of view. Some players, including me, don't want the game to be too easy. And again, I'm on board with this. I am totally cool with the Breaker Incendiary nerf, but if this gun is getting nerfed, I want to see bigger buffs on other weapons. It's not like we're on some slippery slope right now. We are not close to this game getting too easy. If they buffed a couple of weapons to be on the Breaker Incendiary's level, it's not like this game would completely break instantly. All it would do would give players more options rather than running the Incendiary every game. There's a reason people loved the buff patch before this. The feedback was amazing and they barely added any new content. I've said since day one that I would prefer patches to contain fixes for the things that are currently in the game rather than adding new things. So instead of new content, I'd rather see good balancing and performance/bug fixes. This would take the game farther than any content additions would, trust me, because even though this update is bringing back thousands of players, I guarantee this game will be back to that 30,000 average player count number in a few days after those returning players realize that, despite the new content, the game is still in the exact same state that it was when they left. It is still buggy, their performance will drop, and their favorite gun just got nerfed, so they'll see themselves out again after a few hours of playtime. I also need to add that alongside this balancing issue, there are a lot of people that found out that the devs just aren't very good at this game, which makes it so that they aren't relating to the players' experiences. For context here, the developers ran a special Escalation of Freedom stream the day the game dropped, which featured developers and Sony staff playing the game as they answered questions about the new patch. And let's just say the devs weren't up to par with how players expected them to perform. Sadly, the stream is now over and I can't find any footage of it online, but I personally did watch it while it was happening, and plenty of people are still talking about it. This Reddit post by Jagic does a really good job at recapping what you may have missed. He says that the devs were fighting the automatons on a lower difficulty, were using mainly incendiary weapons, and were all dying within the first 2 or 3 minutes because they would throw explosives at something and stand next to it while it blew up. He also says that when the devs got set on fire, they did not know about the diving mechanic and instead would attempt to stim to survive. Last thing I want to point out is that he also says that they were trying to kill an automaton tank with napalm and incendiary grenades while they shot at it with their incendiary breaker. So, do you see the problem? The devs have absolutely no clue what they're doing, at least in-game, and I don't think anyone in the community is asking them to be professional super Helldive solo players, but it is telling that some of them don't understand how average game mechanics work. Things like diving to put out fire or knowing that fire isn't going to destroy the metal tanks are not only basic game mechanics that 95% of players know, but it's also just basic logic, honestly. Later, Shams Georgiani, Arrowhead CEO, points out that the stream featured only 2 devs and the rest were Sony employees, but says that the devs aren't anywhere near your average skill level. A lot of people saw this comment and are trying to figure out what it means because you could look at it from 2 perspectives. He's either defending the devs, saying they're so good that they're nowhere near the average skill level, or he's throwing them under the bus and saying that the devs are so bad that they're, again, nowhere near the average skill level. I think the description of the stream should give us our answer, but I'll let you be the one to make that call. Anyway, I've spent all of this video so far talking about balancing, which is a huge issue for a reason. That being said, this update wasn't all about balancing. In fact, it was mainly about the content, so let's talk about that. The balancing may have fallen straight onto its face, but how is the actual content in the game? Well, to keep it simple, it's pretty good, but it's nothing more than what we saw during the reveal trailer. So if you've seen that, you've seen everything. But that stuff is really nice. They're all solid additions to the game, especially difficulty 10. In my opinion, they did successfully make difficulty 10 feel different from 9, which is a huge accomplishment because that is easier said than done. The enemy additions are the highlight for me. They all give you an interesting twist when you encounter them. For example, coming across the Spore Charger can really throw a wrench in your fight, reducing the visibility and even exploding on death. The biggest highlight by far is the Impaler, who returns from Helldivers 1. This thing can sometimes be a pain in the ass to fight. Don't get me wrong, most of the time it's fun, but I've died a couple of times and it felt like I had absolutely no chance. And not in the way that it was just too hard, but in the way that I literally couldn't interact with it. There are some instances where it will just instantly one-shot you when the tentacles spawn, and sometimes the tentacles will stunlock you in ragdoll animations, both of which are not fun ways to go out. That being said, 95% of the time, I love the Impaler, and it is the best enemy addition by far since the Factory Strider. Outside of the enemy and difficulty additions, there were some smaller pieces of content, like a reskinned biome, some new environmental hazards, social fixes, and a lot of crash and bug fixes, which I really love to see. However, I think a lot of people, including me, were left feeling like they just wanted a little bit more with this update. They did state in their blog post that this update would feature awesome additions, long-awaited improvements, and a ton of surprises to discover.
So, have we told you everything that's gonna be in the Escalation of Freedom? Of course we haven't.
We have many more surprises in store for you.
A surprise here and there that you maybe didn't expect.
Looking back on that, it seems like a complete bait to just drum up hype, because I'm sitting here looking around like, where are the surprises? Don't get me wrong, I had a ton of fun with this update, am still having fun with this update, and do believe they added a ton of content, more than enough. But for being the first major update that Helldivers 2 has done, complete with a name and a trailer, I am just kind of feeling like there should have been a little bit more. All of the new additions feel a little bit like the same old thing we've been playing for the past 6 months. Take, for example, the Spore Charger, which does add a new level of interaction to the game like I explained, but it's just another reskinned charger, which is now the 3rd one that's in the game. Same goes for the Rocket Strider, which is just a slightly retextured version of the Scout Strider. Look at the new biome too. It's the new swamp biome, but spooky, which just means it's reskinned to be very dark and features dead trees instead of alive ones. We can even say this about the mega bases, which doesn't feature anything new. It's just a larger version of the outposts that we've had in the game since day one. I was really hoping these mega bases would add a unique challenge, but they really don't, to be honest. And I hate to say that, but it feels exactly the same as going into a normal base. Also, the reward at the end of the mega base is complete garbage. It is 2 super samples and 4 rare samples. That is grade A trash. There is absolutely no reason to do the mega base if you're in it for rewards. Just ignore it and move on, because with that low of sample rewards, there is no benefit in risking your life to attempt it. Listen, I hope that you don't take this as me complaining. This is just how I feel. Like I said, I love the content that did get added, but all of it individually feels like small additions that typically get added through random updates throughout the month. Nothing in here besides the Impaler screams major update to me. I think if we just got a couple of new stratagems, an extra enemy, a few more mission types, and perhaps some new ways to spend medals, samples, and requisitions, this update would have been much better received. But still, even without those things, the content is awesome and definitely isn't the main issue with this update. That being said, many of the annoying bugs and glitches that existed for the past 2 months are now gone. I'm sure there have been some that I've missed, but throughout my time of playing the past 2 days, there haven't been any major bugs that have hindered my experience, so huge props to Arrowhead with this one. I am a huge fan of focusing bug fixes, and they got it done here. However, there are no performance changes in this patch, which really sucks. To be fair, I don't think it's gotten worse with this update, but just saying we need performance updates ASAP. All in all though, I think this update is a case of Arrowhead taking 1 step forward and 2 steps backward. The content itself is great, but unfortunately this seems to have absolutely no bearing on the majority of people's opinions. The 2 nerfs, especially the flamethrower nerf, seem to be the only thing people want to talk about. And that's easy to say that it isn't very fair to only talk about the little miss that's in this update and then throw everything else aside. But like I explained, I think it goes a little deeper than this. It's not just the fact that they had one bad change, it's the fact that the bad change is a sign of them reverting to their old ways of nerfing the fun. It's telling players that the buffs we got with patch 1.4 was an outlier and is not the new standard. Which is a really sad thing for players to have to come to terms with, because I think that patch really hyped them up for the future. I just hope they don't take the community reaction the wrong way. The issue is not with the content that was added, it's with the balancing. So what do you think about Escalation of Freedom? Did it meet your expectations or fall short of the mark? Let me know down below and click subscribe if you enjoy content like this. It takes 2 seconds to scroll down and click, so please do it. It would really mean a lot. I make a wide variety of Helldivers 2 and gaming content. Trust me, it's not all complaining here, but when an issue like this arises in the community, I always like to give my take. Anyway, that's all from me. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching till the end. You're the best. Take care of yourself. See ya!